Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Death and Peaches by Nova Walsh, narrated by Tiffany Morgan. Chapter 1. The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The song had bounced around my head ever since I'd crossed the border from New Mexico to Texas nearly 2 days before. As I spotted that first "Don't Mess with Texas" road sign, the melody intensified in my mind. It was a song that most of us Texans learned in the cradle. Certainly I had. I'd arrived back in the Texas Hill Country that afternoon after a very long drive from Los Angeles, my little Honda packed to within an inch of its life with all my worldly possessions. It was the height of summer, nearly July, and instead of the beautiful wildflowers I'd enjoyed when I'd visited in April, the hills were now brown with dead grass and shrub. It was not the ideal time to be moving back to Texas in terms of the weather, but it suited me fine otherwise. Back in April, when I'd visited Sugar Creek to help my Aunt Meg cater a wedding at her B&B, I'd made a plan to move back as soon as my LA apartment lease was up. Aunt Meg needed help to get more business, and the plan was to turn her B&B, Primrose House, into an event destination on top of the overnight guest business she currently ran. I was itchy to stop working for other people after culinary school and to start a catering business of my own, so the idea of helping her out with events had turned out to be a perfect fit for the both of us. Just like when I visited in April, I got a little teary as I pulled off the highway into my hometown of Sugar Creek. The pickup trucks lining Main Street, the statue of a longhorn in the square that kids in town loved to climb on, and the sprays of lavender and salvia all around really brought me back to my Texas roots. I'd been gone too long. But there was nothing that could compare to pulling up in front of my best friend's shop to really pull me into the Texas state of mind. Her antique shop, Divine Finds, was all things Texas, and my heart pitter-pattered with excitement as I parked at the curb outside. I hopped out of the car and stretched a while, so tired of driving that I silently vowed not to sit for the rest of the day. As I walked up the steps, I grinned wide, knowing that I was only seconds away from seeing my best friend, Cassie Devine, in person once again. I pushed through the door just as she was coming out of it, and we collided and laughed, falling into each other's arms. "Lady!" Cassie's voice rang out like the sweetest melody, full of warmth and years of shared memories. "Welcome home! Gosh, I missed you." I gave her one more squeeze, then followed her inside the shop. The comforting scents of cinnamon and vanilla met me, and I instantly felt the weight of the road lift. "I missed you too. It sure is good to be home." "I bet. I thought you'd be here earlier." The traffic through El Paso was no joke. I would have gotten here a lot sooner, but there was a major accident that held everything up. A few customers meandered through the antique shop, looking at the wares Cassie had collected from countless estate and yard sales over the past year of being in business. She walked back behind the counter and sat on a stool near the cash register, motioning to an overstuffed velvet armchair across from her. So much for vowing not to sit. But the chair was delightfully soft as I sat and kicked off my sandals, snuggled into the corner, and tucked my feet under me. "Well, you're here now. I don't know what you had planned for the night, but I was thinking we could go over to Lulu's for dinner after a while." I nodded. "That sounds great. First, I want to unpack a little, and I was thinking about heading over to Primrose House to visit Aunt Meg for a bit. Maybe we could do that on the way to dinner, if you don't mind." "Of course." We caught up, Cassie telling me about adventures in antiquing, and I telling her the details of the very long drive I'd just finished. We were deep in conversation when 2 women approached to pay for their purchases. They were in the middle of a lively discussion, their voices tinged with disbelief as Cassie stood to ring them up. "I still can't believe it," the first woman said, shaking her head as she placed a vintage teapot on the counter. "A feast vat. Right there in the council chambers." Her companion, clutching a set of embroidered napkins, chimed in. "I know, right? I thought those council meetings were about as dull as a mashed potato sandwich, but today was like something out of a TV drama. Councilman Landers and Councilman Weiss going at it. They're way too old to act that way, if you ask me. They should be ashamed of themselves, grown men acting like teenagers. Cassie wrapped the teapot carefully in paper and chimed in. A fist fight? That's crazy. What over? The first woman shrugged as she handed over her credit card. Something about that bill they're trying to pass. It's caused quite the stir. I wish everybody would just simmer down. The heat is going to their heads. Yeah, more than likely, her friend added. Although I've heard that bill might change the whole landscape of Sugar Creek, especially for small businesses, so it makes sense they're riled, I suppose. I know the bill you're talking about. Seems like everyone in town is up in arms. You're right. If it passes, it'll be mighty hard to keep the big franchises from moving in and changing things, Cassie said. The women nodded as they pulled out their wallets to pay. One of them leaned into Cassie. I heard Councilman Weiss is being bribed by one of those big lobbyists from Austin. She glanced around the shop quickly. Don't say you heard it from me, though. Cassie handed the women their purchases, her brow furrowed. I hope it's just a rumor. He sure has a lot of power around here, but I guess that would make sense why there's so much fighting. Time will tell, right? The women nodded and smiled. Thanks for coming in, ladies. Take care now, Cassie told them with a wave and a smile before sitting back down with me. As the women left, I turned to Cassie, my curiosity piqued. What was that about? A bill changing the landscape for small businesses? Cassie sighed, leaning back against the counter. Yeah, there's been talk around town. This new bill, if passed, could open the doors for big franchises to come in. It's a real threat to mom-and-pop places in town. That's why things are getting heated. Some council members are all for it, thinking it'll bring growth. Most, though, are worried it'll hurt the charm and character of Sugar Creek. I felt a twinge of concern thinking about my own plans to start a small catering business. Sounds serious. I should probably look into it before I go apply for my business license. Cassie gave a small, reassuring smile. Don't worry too much. This town's always been about supporting its own, even if the bill gets passed. I don't think it'll be as bad as some folks are making it out to be, but it sure has people's tails up. Before I could say another thing, the chime sounded from the front of the shop. Yoo-hoo! A call floated back to us, and Cassie jumped up. I would know that voice anywhere, and I jumped up too. Aunt Meg and her employee Maria, who I'd become close with in April, made their way back behind the counter, all smiles. I grinned, my heart melting, when I saw the woman who'd practically raised me. I squealed and gave them both big hugs. You didn't have to come over. I was planning on visiting the B&B in a bit. Aunt Meg waved a hand. It's no problem, honey. I know you've been in that car for days, and I just couldn't wait. She squealed and squeezed my hand, and I smiled. Our girl is back for good. Cassie pulled 2 more chairs over, and we all sat and caught up for a few minutes. Aunt Meg told a story about a toilet leak that had us all laughing, and Maria told us about her daughter preparing for a trip to Dallas with a school group. After a while, I leaned into Aunt Meg. I have a few ideas for the B&B I want to run by you. I had a lot of time to think on the drive, I said with a laugh. I can't wait to hear them. We need all the help we can get, but you must be dead dog tired. Why don't you stop by in the morning and we can let our imaginations run wild? I nodded. It was true. The drive had taken a lot out of me, but I was buzzing with creative energy and excitement to get my business off the ground. Okay, it'll have to be early, though. I have a lot on my plate since the Peach Festival is the day after tomorrow. Maria lit up at that. Oh, I've heard so much about the festival. I plan to take Daniela. Will you be cooking for it? Yep, I signed up as soon as I knew I'd be coming back for sure. The Peachy Keen contest is what I'm angling for. It's the biggest cooking competition in Sugar Creek. Best peach-related entry wins. The Peachy Keen title goes pretty far in this town, so I thought it would be a good brag for my new catering business, and I can hand out samples and business cards to people at the festival. Hopefully I can get some business flowing right away. I turned back to Aunt Meg. Tomorrow I have to do most of the cooking for the festival, but I also need to stop by town hall and file my paperwork for a business license. It's all filled out. I just need to go turn it in. I also need to stop by Wild Hair in the morning. Mark and Sheila said I could use their van for the festival, so I can drop by the B&B before I go pick it up. Mark and Sheila Connolly had been our neighbors since I was a child. They owned Wild Hair Winery, a beautiful artisan winery near Primrose House that had grown considerably with the influx of tourists over the last decade or so. That'll be fine. I should be around until noon at least. I've got a Zumba class at 1, though, so make sure to come before then. It wasn't a surprise. Aunt Meg was in her late 60s, but she had more spunk and energy than most teenagers I knew. After a few more minutes, Aunt Meg stood and Maria followed suit. We won't keep you girls. We just wanted to drop by and say hi, and we've got to get back to the B&B to set up for happy hour. Hope y'all have a good night. And don't stay up all night gabbing like you did when you were girls. Y'all need your rest. Cassie and I laughed, knowing that in all likelihood we would do exactly that, stay up all night gabbing. I'll come by in the morning and we can talk business, I told Aunt Meg, and she grabbed me for another hug, nearly squeezing the daylights out of me. Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning. Cassie followed them to the door, flipping the closed sign and locking it behind them. Okay. I know it's a little early, but I declare that business hours are over. Time to have ourselves some fun. Chapter 2. After I'd brought my things in from the car and gotten settled into Cassie's cottage that sat directly behind the antique shop, we decided to walk to Lulu's, which was only a few blocks down from Divine Finds on Main Street. It was hot out, but the sun was on its way down, so it wasn't totally unbearable. I loved strolling down the street, reacquainting myself with all the shops and restaurants that made up the business district of Sugar Creek. Being home made me want to leap for joy after the hectic bustle of L.A. How are things going with Ty? I asked as we strolled. She had been dating Deputy Ty Claiborne when I'd been back for the wedding in April, and from what I'd heard from her over the phone, Ty had forgiven her for her role in our questionable sleuthing during that time almost immediately, their romance resuming like nothing had happened. Cassie smiled and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear as we walked. Pretty good. He's been dropping a lot of hints lately about marriage. I don't know, though. We've barely been together a year. For some, that's more than enough time to make things official. Seems like you two are pretty close to perfect, from the outside at least. She sighed, a smile on her lips. He is an amazing man. Supportive, quiet, respectful. I do very much like him. I'm just not sure I'm ready to make that big decision yet. You know what I mean? I nodded. I'd barely had any long-term relationships myself, and since I was still decidedly single at 32, I didn't have much insight to add. We arrived at Lulu's to find a few people waiting in line outside. The warm glow of the neon sign flickered like a beacon in the dusky Texas evening. The familiar scent of smoked brisket wafted through the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter and country music that spilled out every time the door swung open. We leaned against the wall and continued to talk until it was our turn to go inside and order. At long last, after the smoke had done its magic and made me hungry as a bear, we finally entered the restaurant. Stepping inside, a cozy chaos enveloped us. The restaurant was bustling with energy, a symphony of clinking glasses, sizzling grills, and the hearty chatter of locals enjoying their meals. The walls, covered with vintage Texas memorabilia and old black and white photos of Sugar Creek, radiated a rustic charm that put me in a nostalgic mood. As we approached the front counter, the mouth-watering aroma of barbecue intensified. The man behind the counter wore a checkered apron smeared with the day's work and greeted us with a jovial, "What'll it be tonight, ladies?" We ordered quickly, ribs and coleslaw and a sweet tea for Cassie, and sliced brisket, baked beans, and Lulu's special sweet potato casserole with a Dr. Pepper for me. With our orders placed, we finally slid into a booth near the back and leaned in to hear each other as we waited for our food. "I still can't believe you're back for good. Sugar Creek hasn't been the same without you, and now you're actually going to live with me. It's like our high school sleepovers all over again, but with wine," she said. I laughed. Aunt Meg had offered me a room at the B&B, but I'd decided to bunk with Cassie instead because I didn't want to take up a room that Aunt Meg might otherwise rent out. And Cassie had been so giddy at the idea of the two of us living together that I couldn't say no to her invitation. Like I told you before, though, I'm only staying on one condition. You have to let me do most, if not all, of the cooking while I'm here. Cassie grinned and sipped her tea. "Well, if that isn't the deal of the century, I don't know what is." We leaned back and watched the bustle of the restaurant for a few minutes. I was overjoyed to be done with the move from L.A. finally. It had weighed on me for months, and all the work of wrapping things up in California and figuring out what would come next had drained my energy, not to mention that drive. Boy, it was good that it was finished. "I wonder how serious that stuff about the council bill is," I asked, twirling my soda can slowly around before taking a sip. "That sounds like it could mean trouble for me if it goes through. I'll have to do a little digging tomorrow, see if I can find out anything about it on the internet." Cassie nodded. "I know a lot of folks have been up in arms. It doesn't really affect me or my antiquing business as much as the food and beverage places in town, but I can understand the opposition. It wouldn't be good if the character of the town changed, and I think that's what would happen if a bunch of franchises and big-box stores start to come in." We were interrupted by our food arriving. Lulu herself brought out 2 trays and set them in front of us. "Abby, hey girl, your aunt told me you'd be coming back to town. Good to see ya. I don't have time to talk now, but stop by sometime during off hours and we can talk. I heard you're starting a new business, gonna give my little barbecue place some competition. Good on ya." Lulu's barbecue had been an institution in town for more than 20 years, and I knew that me starting a catering gig would be cutting into her business, so I was surprised she was so friendly about it all. "Okay, will do. Thank you. This looks amazing." She gave us a quick wink and a grin, then headed back to the kitchen. I tucked into the delicious dinner, the sweetness of the casserole balancing perfectly with the salty tang of the smoked meat. They had great food in Los Angeles, food that people paid an arm and a leg for, but there was nothing quite like Texas barbecue. A few minutes into our meal, Cassie leaned in, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Ryan has asked about you nearly every day since I told him you were coming back. You should see him, Abby. He's like a teenager, blushing, agitated. I think the sheriff has a crush on you." I blushed myself, the heat rising to my cheeks, and sipped my drink, trying to hide my growing smile. "Really?" I asked, my voice barely above a murmur. "I've been missing him, too. I was hoping something might happen between us now that I'm back in town, but I didn't want to get my hopes up too much. It's been a while since we last saw each other. Hopefully he's forgiven me for the incidents around Trisha and Greg." A few months prior, I'd catered a wedding at Aunt Meg's B&B when one of the bride-to-be's enemies turned up dead. Cassie and I had done a bit more snooping than we should have, and had ended up in hot water with Sheriff Ryan Iverson and Cassie's boyfriend, Deputy Ty. But along the way, the sheriff and I had grown feelings for each other as well. At least, I had grown feelings for him, I wasn't too clear about his feelings. We'd emailed back and forth some over the last months, but mostly it was getting to know you kind of things, not what I would call romantic in any way. So I wasn't sure if the interest ran both ways. Cassie's expression softened with understanding. "Oh, Abby, everyone makes mistakes. And if I know Ryan, which I think I do, he's been counting the days until you come back." Suddenly, Cassie's face lit up with an idea. "I've got it. What if we do a double date? You and Ryan, Ty and me? It'll be fun, casual, no pressure." My heart harumphed at the thought. A double date? I don't know, Cassie. It's been so long since we've seen each other. A date might not... Cassie reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Oh, honey, no. He is ready to date you, and you are ready to date him." She smiled, a sly, knowing smile. "I can see it all over your face." I let out a small, nervous laugh, the idea growing on me quickly. The thought of seeing Ryan again, but with the security blanket of Cassie's presence, was suddenly very appealing. "Okay, fine. A double date, but let's keep it low-key, okay?" Cassie clapped her hands in excitement, her energy infectious. "Absolutely! Low-key is my middle name." I raised an eyebrow, and she giggled, then shrugged. "Well, I can try." "Okay, but not until after the Peachy Keen competition. And it better be casual, Cass. I don't want it to feel like a romantic date, just a friendly catch-up." I wasn't sure about it, but I also didn't want to keep going down this line of thinking. Best to agree with her and shove all thoughts of Sheriff Ryan Iverson out of my mind for the time being. I had a business to start after all, and a competition to try to win. I needed my wits about me. Her grin made me nervous. It was sly and calculating, and I could tell she was hatching plans that I probably wouldn't like. Matchmaking plans. I focused on my dinner and eventually steered the conversation in other directions. After a while, I finished every scrap on my plate and licked the fork clean, leaning back in the booth with a satisfied smile. "You're going to have to wheel me out of here." Cassie laughed and patted her stomach. "I know, right? It should be a sin to make people want to eat too much. All right, you ready? I have a bottle of wine at home with our names on it. I bet you want to get to bed early, too." I smiled and nodded. The drive had been exhausting, and I had a full day tomorrow getting ready for the festival. But I was ready to work and excited to be home. Chapter 3. Waking up the next morning, I was immediately buzzing with energy. I was so excited to get things going for my business that although I still felt sore and tired from the drive the day before, I couldn't stay under the sheets any longer. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a gentle, warm glow across Cassie's spare bedroom, where I would be staying until I got myself off my feet. I stretched, feeling a sense of purpose and excitement for the day ahead. It was my first full day back in Sugar Creek, and I already had a laundry list of things to do to get my catering business up and running. The smell of freshly brewed coffee beckoned to me from the kitchen, a comforting reminder of the simple pleasures of home. Cassie was already up, humming to herself as she poured 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Morning, Abby. Did you sleep okay?" she asked, sliding a cup across the counter towards me. I sat on a bar stool and took a grateful sip, the rich flavor revving me up even more. "I slept great. That bed is divine." I laughed at my joke, and she laughed too. "I've got to go over to Fredericksburg this morning. There are a couple of estate sales I need to hit up. Stock for the shop is getting low, but I should be back sometime this afternoon. Here, let me give you keys for the shop and house so you can come and go as you please. I made them myself." I almost spit out my coffee, and she burst out laughing. When I'd been here in April, we'd gotten into a barrel full of hot water after she'd copied a set of keys Ty was in possession of with the key machine she had in her shop. "Glad to hear you're using the key copying machine for good purposes," I replied, taking the keys and slipping them into the pocket of my jeans. "I've got a busy day, too. Lots of work for the festival tomorrow. I'll probably be over at Primrose House most of the day preparing for the festival." Cassie nodded. "If you need to cook here, you're welcome to." "Thanks. I might just do that, actually. It'll be easier than going back and forth from Primrose House. I won't do it for the catering business. I need to work out of a commercial kitchen, and that's what Aunt Meg's B&B is zoned for. But for the festival, when I'm just handing out samples and taking part in the competition, it shouldn't be a problem. And if you're around, maybe you can be my taste tester and give me some feedback. I'm still not sure what I'm going to turn in for the competition tomorrow. I have 3 options, and I'll do samples of each, but I want to have it figured out before then so I can make sure to have my best work on the competition entry." "I love it. I'll be a taste tester any day. I should be home before dark." We enjoyed our coffee together a few minutes longer and then went our separate ways. I had so much to do before I was ready for the festival and not much time. I grabbed my notebook, filled a travel mug with another cup of coffee, and hit the road. The drive to Primrose House was short but scenic, the familiar streets of Sugar Creek passing by in a blur of quaint storefronts, kids playing in the park, and tourists meandering. It wouldn't be long before the summer sun chased everyone inside, but the morning was still pleasant enough to coax people out. My mind raced with potential recipes and ideas for the festival and for my business as I made my way to the other side of town where the B&B was. Aunt Meg and I had agreed that I would use the B&B kitchen for all of my catering activities, at least until I could afford to do something different. I still had debt from culinary school, so I wasn't starting out with much. It would give me a major advantage to not have the expense of renting a kitchen right off the bat. I pulled into the Primrose House parking lot and hopped out of the car with my coffee. It was heating up quickly, but I didn't rush as I made my way up the stone path to the wide front porch. Even in the heat of the summer, Aunt Meg managed to have lovely flowers blooming in beds surrounding the porch. Bees buzzed in the lavender, and the eponymous primrose that snaked a pink path along the edges of the walk. Stepping inside, I found Maria at the small podium they used as a check-in desk near the front of the sitting room, and I smiled. "Good morning. It's so quiet in here." "Hello, Abby. A tour bus just left with a group of guests, but it's a little slow right now, too. Although we have several reservations for the weekend, people coming in for the Peach Festival, I believe." I frowned and nodded. I was sure our annual festival would attract quite the crowd of tourists, but it worried me that business was slow. Ever since Aunt Meg had confided in me about her money woes in April, I'd been worried about her and the B&B. "Do you know where Aunt Meg is?" "Last I saw, she was out back working in the flowers." "Thanks," I told her and headed down the hall that led to the kitchen and the back door. The kitchen was old, but it was cozy. To the right, there was an ancient refrigerator and a walk-in pantry. A large wood block island sat in the center of the kitchen, and a window over the sink looked out to the backyard. Near the far wall, there was a kitchen table and a sideboard where Aunt Meg had coffee, tea, and snacks set out for guests. Instead of heading out the back door to find Aunt Meg, I took a few minutes to reacquaint myself with the kitchen. The space would be an important part of my business. Although I'd grown up in this very kitchen, it had been a long time since I'd regularly used it. After our parents died in a car crash when I was 8, my brother Devin and I moved into the house with Aunt Meg and our Uncle Nolan. This was the kitchen where my love of cooking had been born. It was where I learned to make sugar cookies for Christmas and Thanksgiving turkey with all the trimmings for the big get-togethers my aunt and uncle had held for all the neighbors every year. This kitchen was where my dreams of being a cook had been born. So it was fitting that I was starting my business here in this same kitchen. Before I could reminisce any further, the back door opened and Aunt Meg came in, knocking her tennis shoes on the concrete
Sample complete. Ready to continue?